Ladies and gentlemen, I am Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran, and today we're going to be taking a look at some more combat footage coming out of Ukraine. This is Ukrainian tanks wiping out Russian infantry fighting vehicles. If you told me 4 months ago that there was going to be videos of Ukrainian tanks bringing the fight to the Russians, I would have told you you had lost your mind. But here we are, and let's take a look at what Ukrainian armored forces can do. Okay, first off, this is definitely coming to us probably from the unit itself. Looks like at least that little bomb there with the flame coming out of it is the symbol for, or very similar to the symbol of the U.S. Ordnance Corps. My guess would be, and then you've got the crossed rifles. My guess would be this is some sort of, well, probably mechanized or armored infantry unit. So you can see they're using their drones. As always, the integration of drones into almost every unit and almost every combat arm in the Ukrainian military has been really fascinating. I honestly am shocked to see how rapidly this technology has been adopted by Ukrainian units. One of the less reported aspects of the Russia-Ukraine war is that as the war has gone on, Russia has been ramping up its cyber attacks. Russian cyber criminals have targeted social media, utilities, television, communication, and more. In this day and age, you can't take your cybersecurity too seriously. That's why I wanted to talk about today's sponsor, Atlas VPN. Right now, Atlas VPN is running a huge discount. You can get a 3-year subscription for just $199 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Time is running out, so get your deal by clicking the link in the description below. Atlas VPN is a virtual private network that creates a secure tunnel when you're browsing the internet. It prevents spying and hides your IP from unwanted observers. Atlas VPN's data breach monitor automatically scans leaked databases and informs you of any exposed personal data like your social security number, home address, or date of birth. Atlas VPN also blocks malicious ads, trackers, and notifies you when someone is trying to steal your data. Atlas VPN is also easy to use. Just open up the app, turn on the VPN, select your country, and voila, you are virtually browsing from another country. You'll be able to see price deals that are only available in certain locations, like deals on airlines or hotels, and you can also access geo-restricted content on streaming services like Hulu or Netflix. Atlas VPN also provides high-speed protection for gaming or streaming. Right now, Atlas VPN is running a huge discount. You can get a 3-year subscription for just $1.99 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Time is running out, so get your deal by clicking the link in the description below. And it sort of makes sense, right? When I was deployed, we had a hand-flown drone that was actually basically like an RC model airplane. You would fly, you would throw it up, and it would circle, loiter overhead, and would use its camera to scan the areas around you. It was great. It did all the things you can see these drones do today, right? You could look up over the next hill, over an obstacle. You could see if anyone was trying to maneuver on you. It really increased your sense of security. So it makes sort of sense that the Ukrainian armed forces would integrate them. I'm just surprised that almost every combat operation is being enhanced with drone technology. And we can see the results right here. So first off, I want to point out this. And this is, a nicely edited video. Shout out to whoever they had editing this. They actually identify the target vehicle, which is a good sign, right? I mean, that's a sign that the tankers know what they're doing. And I think it's pretty fascinating. This is a really interesting vehicle choice. It's a very low profile design. It's an infantry fighting vehicle, so you have infantry that are going to be sitting in the back, and it's going to be driven by a 2-person crew. Doctrinally, it's similar to an American Striker vehicle, but unlike the Striker, this is squat, it's low, it is tracked, not wheeled. It seems very heavy, and what really I want to point out is that this vehicle is positioned terribly. Let's zoom out. I'll show you what I'm talking about, right? So obviously we've zoomed in on this vehicle, but let's zoom it back out just a bit. There we go. Okay, I just gotta point this out. Yes, this is not an armored combat vehicle, so it's possible that it's just been abandoned. I actually think that's the case here. I think this is an abandoned vehicle, but look, it's in the open. It has no cover. It has no concealment. It is directly adjacent to a small town where where individuals, enemy soldiers can get cover, concealment, observe this vehicle, and it can't really observe the enemy. So you see, this is actually the worst of both worlds. It doesn't have what's called standoff distance. Standoff distance would be if it was so far away that the enemy would have to expose themselves in the open in order to engage the vehicle itself. It doesn't have standoff distance because, look, the enemy can get, as close as this tree line, a few dozen meters away, and engage the IFV. So tactically, this is just really, really a poor location. And that's why I think it might just be an abandoned vehicle. It may have just broken down and been left here. Though, I'll also add another caveat, and I'll talk about this at the end. Okay, so as we've discussed, it identifies the vehicle and zooms in, right? There is a T-64 Russian tank. So this is much older, a very old model tank. But one of the things that we have to talk about is that when it comes to tank combat, older tanks are still good at certain things, right? This is a great example of it. This tank is a tank from the 60s, upgraded a bit, I'm sure, but a tank from the 60s can effectively engage certain types of vehicles. I would never put this up against a modern tank, right? We'll see. I would never put this up against a modern tank, main battle tank, but against infantry fighting vehicles or even supporting infantry units. This is perfectly functional, right? So as long as you know what you can and can't do, an older model tank can be a very effective tool. It just is not going to be as effective as a fully modernized tank. So you can see here, one, I want to point out this tank, look, this is doing exactly what we talked about. It is in a concealed location, right? It positions itself so that it has a line of sight onto its target, but it doesn't have to expose itself to drones overhead, observers to the left or right. It really maintains a really good level of concealment while lining up its target, this IFV. So, and you can see the drone is of course functioning as the observer. So the first shot is going to land a little bit to the left. You can see the drone getting a better angle, or a second drone perhaps getting a better angle on this. You can also see here the doors of this IFV are open. I really do suspect this was probably disabled somehow, maybe by one of these artillery strikes, and that this tank is just finishing the job. I don't think there's anyone in here. Certainly if there is, they would be sprinting out of this, right? So you can see the tank is almost using this for target practice, dialing in its rounds and eventually destroying the IFV. Now here's what I want to point out is that we have observed that one of the armored vehicle operators in this scenario seems to know exactly what they're doing, and the other operators seem to be amateurish. And I think what we're starting to see is the tide turning in terms of experience. And what I mean by that is that Ukrainian troops are improving their survivability on the battlefield. They are staying on the battlefield longer. They're gaining valuable experience. They're becoming very skilled with their equipment. This is so important. We've seen it when we looked at the video of the mortar team in operation, who were operating with extreme levels of speed and professionalism. We see it in this tank where the tank commander has positioned it really well, really appropriately. And we see the opposite seeming to happen in the Russian military, where you have, again, amateur hour, where this IFV is just abandoned in the open. It's not a great location. Again, possible that it's been disabled, but you still wonder why this IFV was even out here in the first place. So what happens and what we've read is that the Russian military is actually gotten pretty desperate. They've taken a lot of their training battalions and their training cadre and moved them to the front line, where they've also taken casualties. So what you have is fewer and fewer training cadres to instill proper doctrine, proper tactics, proper organization into military formations. And so what you have is this incredibly high level of casualties. Every casualty Russia takes is replaced by someone who has even less training than the person they're replacing, right? And the faster this cycle happens, the more you run out of training cadre, the more you have inexperienced trainers who don't have enough time to properly train troops. The overall quality and tactical savvy of your force is going to diminish, right? In contrast, if you are Ukraine and the average length of time, for example, that a soldier can serve on the front line consecutively rises, let's say it rises to be 6 months statistically before you're likely to be injured or killed, right? You can see that the numbers start to favor Ukraine, that they favor the experience is being acquired at an institutional level. When you have that, the studies are very clear. The U.S. Army actually did a study. They found that the first 100 days of any unit's deployment were the most dangerous because that unit, even though they had extensive training going into the deployment, there was still no substitute for real combat experience, learning the sights, sounds, smells, and situations of the actual AO where they were operating. And if they could survive 100 days, then the rate of casualties dropped off exponentially. They understood the threats, they could recognize them, they could counter them, they could come up with tactical solutions to the problems. And so I think that is, to me, one of the crucial tipping points, is that if you can attrit the enemy forces so that they never get to that 100 days of experience and instead show up worse and worse, more and more poorly trained, right? They're never going to reach that threshold. Whereas in contrast, your own troops, if they can stay properly equipped and are used in a tactical sense, right, and used in a way that doesn't incur massive casualties, you can actually see them grow and grow so that the average soldier, average trooper in this fight is going to have that 100+ days of experience and allow them to have a much greater survivability rate, right? Because when you enter a unit where everyone is experienced, even if you are not, you're going to rise up to their level. But if you enter a unit where everyone is a green conscript with no idea what's going on, then there's not any knowledge and survival tactics to learn. Nobody knows how to survive in this combat. So I think that is why we're seeing, potentially why we're seeing this infantry fighting vehicle just seemingly having been run amateurishly, and the Ukrainian tank engaging targets properly. Of course, as always, these are released footage, so it's always important to take them with a grain of salt, but I think this one may illustrate a real trend that's occurring on the battlefield. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Thanks again to Atlas VPN for sponsoring today's video. Be sure to check the link in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next one.